Hey guys, how you doing? Hope this is all working. Let's have a look. Going live after a while. Let's see if it's all functioning as should be. Apparently, chat's not showing up. Oh, no, there it is. There it is. It's all coming through. Hey DMAC, what's happening, man? Thanks for joining in again. Cook a curry. I could if I could actually cook, I would do a live cooking segment, but I'm not very good at making food whatsoever. But it's great to be back. Let me know if the audio is working, guys. It's actually been a while since I've sat down in the studio space and done Rukshan on X. Obviously, if you've been watching the other live streams we've been doing, I've been away with Avi Yemeni in London for the massive march that happened there with Tommy, as well as then in Israel, covering all sorts of things in Israel. And it's been quite an interesting journey over the last couple of weeks. I think 4 weeks exactly, where I've missed doing the show. And it was a bit of a momentum that we had built over a few months where I had been doing Mondays and Wednesdays consistently on this particular show and having you guys join in for that with your commentary and your trolling and all sorts of other fun we've had along the way. So it's good to be back. This is more of a warm up session. I had to do this as in to get back into it. I was a bit lazy even today. I was like, oh, maybe I'll start on Wednesday. Um, I kind of had this feeling because once you stop doing something and you need to get back into it, especially if you're doing your own thing, you got to, incentivize yourself to get back on there. But I really wanted to do this with you guys again and get back into it. Yep, George is telling me the audio is okay, not very loud. Thank you, George. That's good to know. Let's see if I can make it louder. It's a little low. Okay, that's good to know. Let me just put it up here. All right. Is that getting better? Is that more louder? Let's have a look. I'll wait for your feedback if this is louder. Hey Frag, how you going? Thanks for joining in. Mate, great to meet you. Yes, met you in Israel. You took me into Gaza. That's right. Thank you for looking after us and getting us in there and giving us the protective gear as well. Great to see you, mate, watching on this show. So welcome. Obviously, you might not follow much of Australian politics. I don't talk about too much about Israel and Gaza on these shows. That's more for Tuesdays and Thursdays when I'm with Avi Yemeni on the Opposition podcast. But I will definitely be talking about my experience in Israel if you guys have questions about that, because people had a lot of different things to say about that. Okay, oh, it's not much louder. Okay, let me try to make it even louder. Let's see what's going on with this mic. We got here someone saying turn your volume up to the people in the audience. So they're saying it's fine. This is the hardest thing with audio because people have it at different settings. With visual, obviously, whatever device you're watching on visually, it kind of looks okay. Maybe the colors might be different, but audio wise, it comes through different on different devices. And it's always been a hard thing to get right. So before I get into the show, I do have some news stories, Australia specific, and that's one of the reasons that it's taken me a while to get back to doing this show, because once you're abroad and doing things overseas and kind of really working overseas, you miss out on the nuances of the politics which are happening in Australia. And I definitely love covering things in Australia and obviously in my home state of Victoria as well. Frag says happy with the sound. Look, guys, we'll go with this for today. I feel like it's a bit too loud coming through the feedback on my headphones, but could be just the mic settings that I did when I reset this up. And it took a few episodes to fine tune it to everyone's liking last time around, so it might be a similar thing this time as well. We got Mitch here. Mitch, thanks, mate. Watching on X. Rukshan, are you worried about Australia's future? Big Rook man, I am definitely 100%, as someone that loves this country, worried about the future of Australia and where it's heading. And I know people have probably in every decade there's people that talk about the future and worry about it, and it's a part of politics that you're always kind of not looking for flaws, but maybe okay. Let's say part of politics is always complaining, and complaining about issues and so on, right? There is a difference now, I think, in today's world. The issues that we discuss do have consequences to alter, our future, like how we are living today. And even though we consider the standards today as being less than what they were maybe a few years ago, the future even looks even more disastrous for us here in Australia. So definitely, it is something I do worry about. Deb, thank you, Deb. Hey, Deb, how you doing? DMAX says, all good, we'll figure it out. Just happy to have you back, mate. It's good to be back. Uh, do you, Andy says, do you have the Zionist stooge tonight? I mean, not tonight, guys. That's on that's on Tuesdays and Thursdays with Avi Yemeni. So we can do all the Zionists complaining on those shows. Why don't we forget about all the Zionist stuff for these shows? How about that? That's going to be impossible for people watching. So here it is. Stacy, thank you. Hope you're doing well. Anthony, great to see your comments again, mate. Trump's fault. Yes, everything can be somehow related to Donald J. Trump, especially if you're a radical left wing Democrat in the US. But even in Australia, Trump derangement syndrome persists as a constant. Doug, thanks for the sound check. Thanks, mate. So it's good. I think we'll stick with this, right? Um, Andy says good. Monica, how you doing? Hello, you wonderful young man. Thank you for considering that I'm young. I am getting up there in age, and I do feel that now when I'm out there working on in my body and my limbs. When I come home after a long day of live streaming. So, thank you for saying I'm still young. And Mitch, thanks you. You say, yeah, I agree 100%. Thanks for your input. I see us treading towards a very dark path and no one really standing up as leader to guide us out of this. Look, I think there are some voices popping up, especially in the political landscape in Australia. We've had a few people like Jacinta Price as an example and Andrew Hastie recently kind of make a defiant stand within the liberal movement, at least, within the basis of the politics that we understand as being those who end up leading us, the Liberal or Labor Party. But there are a lot more people speaking out, and there is a revitalization, perhaps, of patriotism and those type of things going on as well. We've seen things like the March for Australia and more people discussing their faith, even, which has been, really great to see. I think in Australia, being a Christian country, and some of the problems that we're going through in this nation. So there are some glimmers of hope, but having said that, we have seen the acceleration that in countries like the UK where it's all bets are off, right? The wheels have come off completely and it's disintegrating, and we are headed in that direction. So I understand the worries that you are talking about, Mitch, for sure. The pendulum will swing back. We are a couple of years behind. It will get worse before it gets better. It will reverse. Patience. Yeah, look, definitely, to correct things, you need to have a really significant events where you push back against those things, right? And I know I'm talking very kind of airy fairy about this, but the transformation we've seen in the United States of America under President Donald J. Trump, when it comes to issues like gender, for instance, which is still in Australia a lot different than America, they've really pushed back against that, whether it's to do with trans people in women's sports and so on. So there has been a culture shift in America, and you are seeing a lot of the social media companies, for instance, like Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. They're all kind of under the same umbrella, but kind of bending the knee and allowing for more discussion and more conservative politics, and understanding the fact that there is a new, emperor, as it were, Donald J. Trump, and they're singing to his tune at the moment. But that's also the realization that the culture has shifted, and it's more likely than not that there will be Republican presidents in the United States of America, at least in the next term or the next two terms. So those things all intertwine and play into it. You don't want the world to be like that. You don't want people just kind of having free speech for a couple of years because the guy that's in power is, more pro free speech. You want it to be a constant. And that's why you have things like protections within law to ensure those things happen. But more or less, we have seen in the West that the leaders that come into power dictate, for the rest of the corporations that control spheres like free speech, for instance, with their, these mediums that we're using right now. They usually bend the knee to their will. And I don't. It's you can have different views about that, but that's what I've seen happening, right? So under the Biden administration and previous to that, we've really seen a lot of censorship. And that's actually one of the topics I want to talk about today, which is around censorship and our wacky e-safety commissioner. And you're seeing that in Australia, right? Because we don't have strong leaders in the Labor Party or the Liberal Party standing up for these things. So you have this out of control bureaucrat in the e-safety commission, dictating not just to Australians but to the world and these social media companies about the content that we can see in Australia. But it has far more ranging significance because it's kind of part of this global censorship industrial complex that people like the e-safety commissioner in Australia, our Karen Julie Iman Grant, have been a part of building. So I'll talk about that today. I think that's a really important topic to talk about. So let's have a look at some more of your comments, and then we'll keep. Look, this is a very casual show, guys. If you're joining for the first time on Rukshan On X, I'm not like I don't go in deep into things too much. I prefer to just talk about news that's happening on X, kind of live reactions to things, pick up on your comments, discuss things that people are saying in the comments. If you want a more of a deep, insightful show, we do the opposition podcast on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And that's not to say I'm just here wasting time. I hope you get something out of this, but it's more about just being involved in the conversation of the news that's happening around us. And that's what Rukshan On X is really about. So if it's the first time you're watching this show, thank you for joining in. And I hope you've hit that follow, that subscribe, or that like wherever you're watching. So this is multicast, as you can see. The comments do show up. Be respectful with your comments. You can do super chats if you want to support me on YouTube. I don't mind people trolling me as such. You can't get into derogatory or hateful or inciting violence. Obviously, that's problematic on many fronts. Those things aren't welcomed. But if you want to have a go at me, sure, criticize me. I'll really even engage with your criticism. I'm not a softie when it comes to those things. DMAC, you've got here, what is going on behind the scenes at the LNP? It's a shit show, but I couldn't. Yeah, I'm going to talk about Susan Ley as well today, later in the show. Jamel says, can we start our own MAGA, make Albo go away? Please, Wended, to follow Trump's lead. And MAGA. There is a bit of a MAGA, well, I mean, the media alleges, the left-wing media alleges that there's a MAGA movement within the Liberal Party as such. I don't know for sure. Definitely there's a more patriotic movement. I don't think you can always transplant the same type of things which are happening in America into Australia. As much as I would love to see a very similar movement to MAGA in Australia, I don't think we really have that infrastructure at a grassroots roots level, and our political system is not geared towards the same type of way that politics is done in the United States of America. I mean, it could change in the future, and we could have this reinvigoration of patriotism that helps change that. But as it is right now, for that kind of movement to build here is much harder, is my understanding. Great comment. Be this change you want to see. I agree. Lucy, hope you're doing well, and you got their verse from the Bible, 8:32. Ray J. Lane says, you've been to Gaza, yet show us what's really going on. And Emerson Tell lies. We are still waiting. I know people criticize me for that trip into Gaza. I'll probably talk about that a bit later as well. DMAX says, Australia is 5 years ahead, but 10 years behind. Australia is WA of the world. Yeah. Does Karen and her shenanigans lead us into digital ID? I think I'll jump into this story now about our Karen. So let's bring this browser up. Australia brands graphic videos of Charlie Kirk assassinations and Ira Sarutuska train stabbing. I'm sorry if I butchered those names. 3 graphic videos from US, including Charlie Kirk's assassination and the brutal stabbing murder of Irina Sarutuska, has been banned in Australia. Ads. Australia's online safety watchdog has ordered social media platforms to take down posts showing the brutal stabbing murder of Ukrainian refugee Irina Sarutuska on a train in the United States, the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and the beheading of a Dallas motel owner. Now, off the bat, I understand that this footage is graphic, and it can be distressing for people to view such footage. All right, so I understand that concept before I go on reading the rest of this. In a statement to the news.com.au on Monday, the eSafety Commission said it had received multiple complaints last month about the 3 videos, which were then reviewed by the classification board and assessed as refused classification. Removal notices for multiple posts sharing the videos were sent to Elon Musk's X and Facebook and Instagram owner Meta, with threats of fines of up to $825 $825,000 per day for each offending post. Refused classification content cannot legally be hosted, shared, or distributed, sold, or accessed in Australia. Content that is classified RC is content that exceeds what can be included in the R18 plus and XR18 plus ratings, an e-safety spokesman said. Miss Sarjika 23 was stabbed in the neck in horrific, unprovoked attack on a commuter train in Charlotte, North Carolina on August 22nd, shortly after sitting in a seat in front of alleged killer, DeCarlos Brown. So it was a woman, a white Ukrainian refugee woman murdered by this black man. It was a very horrific stabbing, almost emotionless the way that it was kind of done. There's horrific images of her looking freaked out by the whole thing, and then you have the train people that at certain points don't seem to react to what's happening as well. And then, of course, we've all talked about extensively over the past few weeks the assassination of American political commentator Charlie Kirk, and of course, that was graphic footage as well. But having said that, usually the e-safety, usually when it comes to graphic footage, there's always there's so much graphic footage. Like, how do you determine what is graphics? Like, if we just look at what's happening, for instance, with the conflict in Israel and Gaza, it's graphic. Like, the footage that you see coming out is very graphic. Whether it's on all of these platforms, especially some of the incidents that we have after a shell has landed and there's civilians who have been either maimed, killed, injured in different ways or being taken to hospital, is very graphic footage. But usually from war scenes, that type of footage is allowed. When we had, for instance, this goes back before the Safety Commissioner was doing this type of thing, but the George Floyd incident, we had that footage being all over the media. Obviously, our news services show graphic footage as well, depending on what people might term as graphic. Like, people have different appetites for what they can view and what they can't view. Not in the good way. I'm just saying, in general, like, certain people can discern these incidents differently, and they view they view the world differently. So, for someone sitting in Australia, these bureaucrats to determine what is graphic and what should be denied access to the people in Australia. Again, we have to ask ourselves whether some of these decisions are political in nature. And that is a problem with someone like Julie Imam Grant being in the e-safety commission and the other decisions that she's made in the past, because a lot of it appears to be political. And that's why even these decisions appear to be political, because the commentators that she's gone after are people who are more in the conservative right wing around the world. These other journalists, these 23 journalists that have received these takedown orders. And the commentaries that they've made are really talking about the well, many of them were pointing out the hypocrisies of, especially in the West, where a black man murders a white woman, it is not given the same type of coverage or discussion or concern by our political class and our media class. And is it somehow related to hiding that type of sentiment from the public? Right. So that's what people alleged, like, when these type of decisions are made. And Julie Imam Grant, for her vendetta, I believe, based on the statements that she's made in the past, her being a former ex-employee when it was Twitter, a part of the safety team, she has been wanting to control information online, especially at X and Twitter, and her own little vendetta that she has against Elon Musk and Donald J. Trump for a long, long time. And we're not sure if these decisions she's making is to carry out that vendetta that, it seems that she has. And that is why everything looks sketchy when this woman is involved. There is not many bureaucrats in Australia that people would, know by name, but she is someone that we know by name because she is constantly now. This lady is constantly interfering in our lives and our access to information. And there is an argument to be made that people themselves can decide what videos and what images on the internet that they will consume, whether something is offensive or not. And they don't need the e-safety commission doing that. Especially, these are not hosted in Australia per se. These are on overseas platforms in terms of, like, for instance, X. What jurisdiction does she have, to control journalists in those countries and our access to information from those particular places? And then naturally, people start to wonder, well, if she's canceling these type of content from access to Australians, what comes next, right? What do they determine as the next thing that we can't see as Australians? And we've already seen issues. She tried to cancel some posts by Billboard Chris, issues to do with trans and gender issues, right? She tried to do that, and then she kind of lost all that stuff in the court. There was another one that I think against X. I can't remember the exact case, but she lost that as well. So she's lost multiple battles doing this, but she persists and she continues to try to censor information access for Australians. There was another video that she blocked, tried to block, which was this one. Let me just pull it up. I probably can't show you the video. I don't know if I can't remember if it's still blocked or not. But this was the stabbing attempt of a priest in New South Wales, and she wanted to stop Australians from seeing this as well. So raises lots of questions, and I'm going to be fully upfront. I'm not a fan of the E-Safety Commission. I'm not a fan of Julie Iman-Grant. I don't think they are fulfilling their, the limitations of their intended purpose from the start, which is to protect children online. I think they've gone far beyond that and started now, delving into censorship as the main primary role that they facilitate through their web of things that they can, their tools that they have. And she uses the extraordinary privilege and the power of being a bureaucrat in this part of the Australian government. She uses that to push her weight around in online spaces all around the world. So what I mean by that is that when she makes these petitions to X and these other organizations, she will say, with the force of the Australian government and the Australian people, that we do not want these things, and it's not always borne out, right? If you put this to a vote, maybe people will decide in a different way. So she's making these decisions. Her organization is making these decisions, and that's why people are pissed off, because I don't think her decisions always reflect the type of people, the type of access to information that people in Australia want to have. But let's have a look at what you guys think about this, and I'll reply to some of your comments. Bring up the e-safety, Karen, just so people know what we're talking about. Julie Iman Grant. Let's see what you guys are saying. Yep. So, Mitch, I'll get back to this question that you asked. Does eCarrot and her shenanigans lead us to digital ID? So, obviously, we're seeing this massive debate in the UK with digital ID, and it's actually a very real thing that is happening. Keir Starmer came out and said, "We are doing this. Everyone in the UK has to have digital ID, or they won't be able to work." And the reason that Keir Starmer in the UK gave was that it's to stop illegal immigrants, whatever, to deal with that issue, right? But it's more than that. In Australia, we have the pre-existing requirements in terms of the the infrastructure being put in place for digital ID. And they're talking about it not being mandatory and it's all voluntary. But everything that's happening, all the pieces of the little puzzle that they're putting together, is all about implementing a type of digital ID. So all that infrastructure is being built out in Australia, maybe even faster than what's happening in the UK. But they're doing it to us very slowly, so we don't notice that. They're not doing a Keir Starmer and coming out and saying, "Hey, you're all going to be on digital ID. We're going to force you onto it." In Australia, they're very sly. They're very slick with how they're presenting all of this. They're doing it under the provision of protecting the children, which is an easy one to hide things behind, right? So we got the in December, the under 16 social media ban coming in. And one of the prerequisites of that is some type of system to verify you are who you are when you access these platforms. So, by extension of that, of course, then it's not just kids verifying their IDs; adults are verifying that they are who they are. So it is getting into that level, right? And then when you have all the other digital services come into play, whether it's the government services, right, with this digital ID, the normal things that we access in Australia, whether it's the Medicare or the tax office, whatever, right? That's linked to some sort of MyGov. It's a form of some type of digital ID. but it's not really centralized and linked to other things, right, as of now. It's not linked to our access to the internet. It's not linked to our jobs. It's not linked to our banks. But even though it's voluntary, when these other corporations and other things like workplaces start to build into the same systems, then all of a sudden it becomes centralized, and then everything's linked. And when things are linked in a centralized system, these governments, they may seem benevolent today, but you don't know how they will misuse that when they need to, when they have their little emergency powers and emergency laws come into place, and they have a centralized way of controlling people's lives. I mean, they will put through some legislation, some temporary emergency power to use that in a way that benefits them. And they will say to people that we are doing this for your own protection right now, and we're using these tools. We didn't build this on purpose. We're doing this for your safety. And I believe that's the way that digital IT will be implemented more so in Australia, different to what's happening in the UK. So yeah, I've got Drew B saying here, Albo three terms will irreparably, I can't say the word, irreparably damage Australia. I agree. Three terms of Albo, and like, yeah, it's going to be pretty bad. We're probably going to be, like, digital ID chips inserted into us by the time that Albanese ends these terms. We've got Zaxi saying, "Listen up, you little anti-Semites. I'm your Zionizer tonight. I'm going to deep." Yeah, okay, I'm going to read the rest of that. This is the casual chat. We love it. It's my local news channel because I won't watch MSM. Yeah, look, I mean, I really think the consumption of news doesn't have to be these serious things that happen. Even podcasts. I don't know. I used to watch podcasts a lot going back and listen to them a lot, but they've gotten a lot more serious recently, like very serious. And I'm not saying that you can't have experts and topics of serious, and there definitely is. But I feel like every episode now is trying to like find, especially the American commentators, is trying to like be like the smoking gun, like, oh, we found so and so's killer. Oh, we're gonna look at this new investigation. Look at this conspiracy. Oh, it's Israel's fault, right? Like it's just every single episode is like this, and I think news in general, people talking about what's happening in their lives, what's happening in their communities, is more of a social thing. It's more about people's experiences with that news and those interpretations that add to how people react to changes in policy. So there's this casual way of discussing news, and I prefer that. I think the more light approach to it. But look, obviously, we're going to be talking about some heavy topics as well, and even this particular topic on censorship is a very important topic. I think it is a something that's also embarrassing Australia in the global stage because we look like the pariahs of the internet freedoms, but also consequences for us in Australia because we don't know how far this will extend. Well, we know, like us watching, and I know, we know that's going to get pretty bad when it comes to information in Australia. But most of the public, 90% of the public, would have no idea who the e-safety Karen is and the things that she's doing and the consequences of the things that she's doing for us in the future. Uh, A Cynic says Rukshan is a great hub of information. Thank you. Some people would disagree with you. Aloha says, I'm enjoying your show, easy to listen to. That's glad. I'm glad that it's easy to listen to. That's what I want. I want just easy stuff to listen to. I put stuff in the background sometimes, just kind of easy stuff that I can digest. Maybe I can tune out of it sometimes, tune back in, and it's not like too heavy. That's what I want to go for with Rukshan on X. Opposition podcast is a little bit more different. That's on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Let's keep going, guys. Very matchy top tonight. Look, it's not particularly my skin color. I did get a complaint once that I was wearing a top that looks like my brown Sri Lankan skin, and people were like, "Are you sitting at your desk topless doing the show?" So it is slightly a variation. Stu says, "I only enjoy trolling Avi." Look, you're welcome to troll Avi on this show. I might bring up some of the comments here and there. Um, so definitely a lot of the Avi trolls end up on the Rukshan YouTube channel. Martina Bastokos says, worshipping the wall. I did go to the Western Wall. I did. You. I did actually. It was filmed. I proudly went to the Western Wall as a Christian, and I enjoyed that experience. It was a humbling experience. I feel privileged to have been able to be in Old Jerusalem and at that wall. And yeah, I have no problems with people, saying things about that. And people keep posting that photo like it's some sort of gotcha moment or something like this. Guys, that was filmed. Like I knew that was happening. It's not a secret. I've always wanted to go there. I've always wanted to be connected to the history of my Christian faith in that way, and it's important for me. So yeah, it's not something that I'm ashamed of. But yeah, you can keep bringing it up if you want. I might even show the photo later on. It is what it is. Australia says we're Rookwits for life, mate. Good to see you back on the show. Um, baseline. Benny says Rook. Yeah, fear him, Rook. Fear him, Rook. Okay. Dean Adams, good to see you, mate. Good evening, Rukshan. I hope Elon tells her to shove it. Look, I haven't really seen Elon Musk respond to this one yet. I did see though. Let me just try to bring it up on X. I did share one from Australia. We have the Free Speech Union. Australia has just filed yet another claim against the e-safety office for her latest attempt to censor the free discussions on the news. In this case, it concerns an attempt to ban anyone viewing the murder of Irina Sarusa. So let me just well, probably there's 4 pages of their thing, what they're doing, but I think we'll just read the first couple of points just to see what the Free Speech Union of Australia is doing about this. So it's very not working. Okay. This challenges to a censorship notice that the e-safety commissioner appears to have issued to X Corp on 26th of September. The notice required X Corp to remove a range of videos. Free Speech Union of Australia became aware. Okay, this is not important. Free Speech Union Australia makes this application because it opposes government censorship of the news and wishes to protect the open discussion of political matters within Australia. I think that's what it really comes down to. It's really hard to say, when you start allowing these government bodies to dictate what is and what isn't offensive, to the extent of, especially around political issues, where it's being discussed, whether it's the attempted stabbing of that priest in New South Wales or these murders that we're seeing in the United States of America. These are also part of the political discussions that we have in Australia. So to limit discussions on this by these bodies, which appear to be very political and not really transparent in the manner that they choose to make these decisions, should be concerning. So it's great that Free Speech Union of Australia is taking this matter further. So good on them, and I'll keep an eye on what actually comes of that. But as it appears right now, let me just zoom in more. This is just preliminary. They've put that through. So let's see what that will mean. So it's going to be a tribunal. And if you don't like the eSafety Commissioner, there is a petition at endesafety.net. No, in endesafety.au. That's good. End eSafety, abolish the Online Safety Acts. Endesafety.au. All right, we can get behind that petition. And I also believe there's a way you can check if you have been censored. So you can fill this in here. I should fill this in. Give your username, give all your details on X, and submit a document via the Freedom of Information Act to see if the e-safety permission is keeping files on you. And it has been revealed that they are actually tracking a lot of different people and keeping, lists, I would say, very communist style dystopian things coming out of Australia, sadly. Let's keep reading your comments, guys. Let's keep going. Soulshine says, you are not going to make it, mate. I'm going to make it just fine. DMAX says a person could post about being a white Australian in a heterosexual Christian marriage with 2.5 kids and loving life, and they would be called far right. That's true. It's sad, but that is exactly correct. Mitch says exactly they're going after footage that destroys their narrative. Imagine if they had this psycho during COVID. I mean, look, they didn't have this psycho during COVID. I think during COVID it was actually even worse because what the Twitter files showed after they were released was, and some other documents that were released, even Meta here in Australia, Facebook, was that the government directly was in cahoots with these social platforms during COVID to silence experts. Right. Let's forget about silencing you and me. Let's forget about silencing us on X and Facebook where we're talking about different things, right? Let's just say that they did that. Worse than all of that, they tried to deny, professional experts that had an alternative view, the government experts, from having their opinions seen online. I think that's where we're getting into really, really dangerous territory. Censoring everyday people, that's bad enough. That's probably, okay, look, it's probably worse. But just in the COVID context, the fact that they try to hide the information from counter experts, that, when we look at it today, when we look at what happened after COVID and we look at the I don't want to go into specific things, but like vaccine injuries and people obviously dying from things related to vaccine injuries and so on. And even just the discussions around how useless masks were, or how, unscientific lockdowns were, for instance. There were experts during those years, during COVID, putting out those opinions and giving their expert analysis and opinion and their studies on these things, which were being directly targeted by the government and social media companies. Stop people from seeing that information, first to learn about it themselves, which we should be entitled to, right, in these so-called free countries in the West, at least. But then also going further step, to not have any other information besides the government information. Do you remember that famous clip with what's her name, Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand, where she's like, "We are the only source of truth." And all governments, especially in our countries like Australia and New Zealand, the USA, Canada, even maybe, would love to have that power where they are the only source of information. All right. So it's a bit different, I think, than COVID times. Obviously, the E-Safety Commission is a threat because they use this kind of legislative power that they have to stifle free speech in a way that people don't really notice it happening, but we notice it, so that's why we're talking about it. Stu, great point. It's only graphic if it doesn't fit their narrative, and that's true. I think that if we had, for instance, a again, I'm just gonna come up with a scenario here. For in Australia, an Aboriginal person, for instance, killed by a white police officer, and there was footage of that. Do you think that would be censored? Do you think the e-safety would be jumping on to censor that, or do you think that would be something that would be pushed and ingrained into the eyes and the minds of Australians to to stow to push a certain narrative? I'm not talking about who was right or wrong in that situation. I'm saying, would that footage be removed? And I tend to think, like Stu says here, if it doesn't fit their narrative, they're likely to remove it. But if it does fit whatever narrative that they're pushing, they're likely to keep it there for people to see. And it's knowing that that's the case. That is why I question the e-safety office. EDU says e-safety is about controlling the narrative and ending independent media. Yes. The attack against X is the focus on X, probably not the attack on X, because she's going after other platforms as well, but she focuses on X, is because X really helps promote independent media above even mainstream sources of media. And the independent voices, because they're not controlled as such by the interests of their corporations, right? The limitations of perhaps their corporations and the guidelines that they might set up, whatever, to be in line and what's that word? In lockstep with the government. People of independent media are not really constrained by that. So they share more honest opinions on many things, especially things like these type of criminal activities. They will share content that is less filtered and more honest in the sense that it hasn't gone through these censors to shape it or create a narrative that is palatable to the public. And I think that's what they really want to control. DMAX says Karen is like the mean stepmom trying to be the mother of adults and not liking what they have to say. Yeah, definitely. She does feel like she's doing that. Elon should censor Albo until she backs down. Yeah, I know, pull off all the government accounts of the Australian government politicians. David says, getting deported soon. You've been wishing, David, for me to get deported for a very, very long time. I am not going to be deported, mate. All right. I'm just not sure if I should keep reading these comments or we just keep going to the next story. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. There's a lot of comments that have come through. She is a CIA patsy. So the story of Karen, Julie Imam Grant, is that she was actually, I believe, offered a job by the CIA after graduating, but she apparently turned it down and pursued another career. I think she was with Microsoft, and a few other tech companies with X. Then, of course, the Australian government now. So she turned down her CIA job offer, if we're to believe any of this. All right, let's keep going. I'll go to the next story just to keep it interesting for everyone. How's everyone going? Hope you're enjoying the show so far. Let me bring up what I wanted to talk about next. And that is really, look, this is a topic that is pissing people off when I talk about this, but, you know, I have my views on this and I'm going to share them with you because I don't know. Like, I don't know about this flotilla, the flotilla to Gaza that they were sending with the aid, Greta Thunberg and her mates. And I'm going to just use Greta as an example because she is the most prominent one, but we do have Australian activists as well who are caught up in this flotilla that went from all parts of the world with all types of different activists to take aid into Gaza, so called their claim. But a lot of the footage that's come out since, even the footage that was there available beforehand, didn't look like they had much aid to take in. They looked like a political stunt. And people get worked up about it because like, oh well, Rukshan, you're complaining about these people that want to take aid and help and feed babies, and no one's doing that, and all this kind of stuff. I understand the arguments, but at the end of the day, these activists, I don't believe that they were doing that specifically. They are doing a political stunt by trying to enter a war zone, right, to break the blockade or whatever they're doing, right, for whatever reason that they're attempting this again, and this is Greta's second time that she's gone there and done this. Um, there's consequences to these actions, guys. There's literally consequences to these actions of going into or wanting to break a naval blockade, for instance, and go into a war zone. These civilians, activists, thinking that they can, do this is maybe you believe they can. I'd love to see the comments, but yeah, just the consequences of your actions is a real thing in life. Like if I wanted to right now, for whatever reason, go into like Russia and Ukraine and go into some area that's controlled by Russia and give the Ukrainians aid, there would be consequences. For instance, if I was captured by the Russians, right? It goes without saying that there are consequences to those type of actions. And as it is right now, where the Israelis have had to, all these ships that are coming, they've had to, I think, for the safety of the activists, really, to stop them from getting to the war zone, get them before they actually breach the blockade, because that's a security risk. I would expect, for instance, if Australia had a blockade, a naval blockade, when we're having some sort of tension with one of our neighbors, for instance, or with China, and some random activist from some other country was trying to come into Australian waters while we're protecting our national security, I would hope that our naval team and our military or whoever it is was able to intercept them and detain them, potentially jail them in the country and then deport them, right? That is how you deal with national security interests and risks. Any country that is engaged in some type of war would be doing something like this. So it's no surprise that Israel would take actions. Do you really honestly think that they would just hang back and let a bunch of activists in their crappy little dinghy boats coming to Gaza and create another security risk? especially during a time when they're trying to negotiate these peace deals, or the US is trying to negotiate these peace deals. Of course not. The last thing you want is 40 dumb, or however many of them that came, 100 or 250, these dumb activists being used as pawns to extend the war, or be taken as hostages themselves, whatever it is. So I commend the Israeli Navy for taking them, detaining them, and sadly then having to bear the cost of deporting them as well. Like it's a nuisance. And they were not. I don't know what they were achieving. Like I just don't know what they were achieving. I don't believe them. And now today they're complaining about the conditions of their detainment. Like Greta Thunberg, this Australian activist, they're saying, "Oh, the conditions aren't great in this, detention center." Well, that's life. Like that's what happens when you go into a war zone. If you want to be this brave activist, you have to be prepared for the consequences. And it's not going to be a 5-star hotel, right? The people that are being taken hostage on October 7th, for instance, the Israelis, if you've seen some of the horrific conditions of their detainment in those tunnels by Hamas, and then as well as the civilian suffering, of course, of the Gazans as well in the war conditions, it is nothing in comparison to the little inconvenience that these idiots that decided to go there on boats with their fake aid are having to go through today. It's nothing because they're being medically checked. There's obviously a lot of people looking out for them. They're being held in a facility to deport them, usually on flights paid by the Israeli government. I believe the Greeks have flown out Greta. And now they're just spreading nonsense stories about, oh, it's just really bad conditions. The food is not great, or there might be bed bugs, right? Or like they're saying, oh, Greta was tortured, that she was made to kiss a flag. It's like complete nonsense. I don't know. Like people might think I'm not being empathetic here or something, and I don't support like people protesting and things like. I support all of those things. Protest, right? Do your little flotilla thing. If you want to do it, well, this is one of the consequences of that. So I feel no pity. I don't feel sorry for them. I think it's a good lesson, and I even believe that someone like Greta Thunberg, even though that she's been taken, kidnapped, and taken hostage twice and tortured in the minds of people, she will most likely go back there again for another stunt. This is the kind of group that we're dealing with. And people are being offended that I call them like, terrorist activists, but they are. They support terrorism in the sense that some of the actions that they take, indirectly or directly, maybe they know that what they're doing, support the efforts of groups like Hamas, which is a terrorist organization. And if you want to talk about aid, like someone was earlier before saying they helped me get across the border into Gaza, and I went and saw where the aid was being distributed in Gaza. There is kilometers and kilometers and kilometers and tons and tons and tons of aid coming in from all parts of the world, being stored there, with Gazans working there, with trucks coming in all the time, bringing in the aid. Yes, there are issues with distributing the aid, but beyond that, to say that there's no aid there, that people aren't trying to put aid into the country, it's just all complete nonsense. Like there is actually efforts on the ground for a long time. And beyond all of that, another point that I've made is when it comes to this, any war, anytime you're fighting people, your enemies or people you're opposed to, there's no obligation really to do aid. You think the Russians and the Ukrainians are putting aid into their different towns that they're fighting over there? It's not a normal thing. Obviously, this is slightly different because we're talking about a terrorist force in Hamas and a group of people in the civilians potentially who might not want to be under their control. That where the Hamas is controlling the access to these aid, and there's no other options for these people to get aid in there. So that's why there's more of a importance of having those channels opened up with the UN and other organizations to help the people there. There's definitely the assistance that the world wants to provide that's happening there. And this flotilla, Greta and her mates, were offered the opportunity by multiple governments and the Israelis to drop off that aid in whatever aid that they had, which appeared to be empty, into those ports where they would be then distributed. So, I just think it's complete nonsense, and it's just literally this kind of mentality of the West, right? I don't want to make it like a race thing either, but like it's the West And a lot of these kind of activists, these type of activists here, who think they can kind of save the world with their activism by doing these stunts. And Greta's been doing it for decades when it comes to climate change since she was a little kid. She's been an eco terrorist. And now people like Greta and these other activists are doing similar stunts. It's not achieving anything, it's not doing anything. If anything, it's putting resources towards them, attention on them, me. And there's much larger issues at play. Yeah, so their little boats with their little packets of aid was never going to do anything. It was never going to be enough. And really, when you looked at the boats, there was not aid in there. They threw the aid off board with these pathetic stunts, or they just had empty aid, or they ate the aid on the way there. That's the honest truth. Let's have a look at the comments. Yeah, D-Max, right. Decades is a bit much. I think Greta's still pretty young, but she's been doing it for a long time. Like, Greta has been a part of discussions when it comes to activism for a very long time. And this is not Greta Thunberg, by the way. She hasn't just changed. Greta Thunberg, I had her here. Let me bring up Greta. This is Greta. There we go. So they're saying that she was tortured, that she was pulled by her hair across the ground and then made to kiss the Israeli flag. This is the kind of nonsense that these people are trying to put out into the universe. So then online, these things spread and it becomes like, oh, they're torturing the poor activists who are just trying to save the babies. It's all just propaganda. And unfortunately, these Westerners are engaged in it as well. And I think more than anything, they just help prolong these type of the war that what we're seeing in Gaza and Israel, and yeah, it just aids the terrorists. So this is Australian Gaza flotilla activists detained by Israeli complaint of degrading and humiliating treatment. Australian activists detained in Israel have told their country's officials of degrading and humiliating treatment they claim to have received after being arrested on board a flotilla carrying aid to Gaza, with one, Surya McKerwan, saying he had been slapped and he had his arms dislocated and head slammed into the ground. It's interesting because we did see reports that some of these activists were attacking, for instance, the medical staff who were trying to do medical assessments on them. I don't know exactly in terms of what is happening between the detainment of these type of individuals, but I've seen just in protest here in Victoria when the police trying to detain people, these type of left-wing activists don't like to go down easy. They don't cooperate. So it's possible that they've had to be a bit heavy-handed when dealing with these types. But again, you are knowingly sailing into a war zone where you say these activists say that in this war zone there is a murderous dictatorial regime committing a genocide. They are actively going into this space. So if they're not aware of the consequences, maybe again, if they truly believe those things, then they should be aware of the consequences of such actions. But lucky for them, the worst that's really happening to them is they're being detained, they're being processed, they're being checked medically, they're being put through the system, and then they're being deported back to their countries, to the privilege of their Western nations. They're being sent back. So yeah, it's just nonsense. But look, I personally don't mind them, having a stint in a detention center. Let's be complete. I'm just being honest with my personal views. I don't mind them having a stint in a detention center for doing the things that they're doing. I would expect the Australian government to detain people that try to come into our waters in that same manner when there's a blockade. Like, that's just my expectation of national security. These kind of activities should not be encouraged, especially if it costs the taxpayers in that country millions and millions of dollars to deport them back, because there's a cost associated with dealing with this nonsense. And it's the same thing. If you love your country and you value national security, you would deal with these type of threats. And these activists are really a national security threat when it comes to this issue. But yeah, let's have a look at your comments. I don't know. People don't always get unhappy about my views on this, but these are my views. One of my main commenters these days, Kitty Kumar. Kitty, thank you for hate watching this Zionist puppet. More plastic in the ocean. Yes, they were throwing plastic overboard, definitely. Kitty says $7,000 per post paid by your Zionist masters, you zunt. Uh, $7,000 per post. Honestly, like people have been making that claim now for like the last couple of days since I got back from Israel, especially since they saw me at the wall and they're saying, Rukshan, you're getting $7,000 per post. Guys, if I was getting $7,000 per post, like, I, I kid you not, I'll be posting all the time, but I'm not. Like, it's just ridiculous. These things that people are saying, it's just all made up. The fact that people believe this kind of nonsense, this is why you can't believe anything else that they're saying. The fact that these kind of comments are made is a reason that I don't believe there's any aid on those boats, like any significant amounts of aid. It was all just propaganda. It's all just a stunt. Hippie says the hulls were empty. I'll read some of these comments. Uh, has Greta given up on climate change? Well, this is the thing. When it comes to Greta, right, climate change is not in fashion anymore. Like the discussion on climate is not in fashion. Now, what's in fashion for these forever activists is donning on the kafaya like they have there. This is what they're doing now. This is her main mission because this is where the most attention is for their grift, their careers, what they do, right? As activists, they're professional activists, professional left-wing activists. So these are the causes they attach themselves to, and Greta has become a preeminent, sorry, uh, activist when it comes to pro-Palestinian space. There are people sending her letters and fan mail, and they're worried about her safety. They're fundraising for her. They want to save her from the evil Zionists who have apparently imprisoned her in horrific conditions and are torturing her and making her kiss the Israeli flag. Like this is the world that she wants to be in out right now. So yeah, definitely. I wouldn't say she's given up on the climate thing. That'll come back again. Like this there'll be a natural end to this conflict at some point, where these people will move on back to other areas, and Greta will naturally go back to her ways as a eco terrorist. I got a super chat here. Thank you. This is from Warren Keon, First Tribes of England. $10 super chat. Don't tell Avi he gets upset. You get money. Joke. It's true. He does get upset when I get super chats. So, guys, if you really want to upset Avi Yemeni, especially during the opposition podcast, please ensure that those super chats go through Rukshan Fernando's YouTube channel. That is one way that you can really stick it to Avi. I know that for a fact. Greta's hairstyle is torture. Of course, she has kidnapped. Gigi says you're full of shit, Rukshan. Shame on you. Tell me exactly what I'm full of crap on. I don't believe these activists. I'm not saying that what's happening in Gaza is like good or something. I'm not talking about the war itself. I'm just saying these particular Western activists are just full of it. Their stunts are full of it, and they're saying, "Oh, we were arrested on international waters. We were kidnapped on international waters." Well, the whole aim of their flotilla was to break the blockade. Any sensible military, any sensible navy would get these individuals before they break the blockade. Like it just makes sense. Like it makes completely perfect sense to me that if some people want to invade your territorial waters, that you would, in a wartime, that you would either attack them. In this case, they haven't because they're dumb activists from the West, or you would detain them. If people are making these complaints about the international water, do you know what Trump is doing right now to the Venezuelans? in their little drug smuggling boats in international waters. They are using drones to shoot down cartels who are drug smuggling into the USA via boats. They're just setting up drones and shooting them in all types of waters, right? Countries act in their national interest. And whether you agree with Israel or not, they will act in their national interest. And that national interest would be to stop, these annoying Western activists coming in boats to your country. Like, it's just silly. Rukshan, can we relax on the pro-Israel indoctrination when Arby's not around? Look, man, I'm just talking about this topic of discussion. These activists and Australian activists. Um, yeah, they expect Disney treatment. Yeah, I don't know what the expectation was, guys. I don't know what the expectation is if you or I veered into a war zone uninvited. What do you think would happen? I don't know. All right, guys, let's keep going on to the next story. Yeah, Trump does not mess around. Then the Americans aren't messing around when it comes. This is like drug smugglers, cartels. They're declaring them as terrorists and declaring war on them and blowing up their boats in the dead of the night as they're kind of trying to smuggle their drugs. This is kind of what you got to do sometimes for your national security interests. I don't know. All right, next story, guys. Let's keep going. Let's keep moving on. Yep. All right, guys. Next story I want to talk about was Susan Ley, the Liberal Party, and what seems to be her coming to an end almost. I don't know how she survives everything that's happening around her. Everything, like all the polling doesn't look good. Obviously, what's happening within a party with people going to the back bench and the statements which are being made don't look good. This is not uncommon for the Liberal Party, whether it's in Victoria or the federal Liberal Party, as far as the main ones that I follow. They always seem to have some sort of internal rifts happening and, disagreements about their core values and the things that they believe in. And the reason that Andrew Hastie, for instance, went back to the backbench was over the issue of immigration, a hot button topic in Australia right now. But this article from the Australian I found interesting because it also shows you that as these things are happening, we do have the rise of other political movements. And One Nation has really risen up over the last couple of months in the polls. And they're not an alternative to the Liberals at the moment, but you're seeing a lot of Australians move towards One Nation on certain topics that the Liberal Party may have had them on before because they're so disunited. They don't have a singular vision when it comes to certain policies, like on immigration, that people tend to move to other parties on those topics. That's my personal view on this. So I think Susan Ley is one of the. She might be a good person and she might have good ideas and she might be a good team player. But as a leader, I think she just doesn't have that gravitas where you look at the way that she's coming across when she presents herself. And as bad as Albanese is, right? As bad as the Labour government is, and we all know how crap it is, and we all know how bad it's going to be come next election in terms of the state of this country. As bad as all of that is, I don't believe that Susan Ley has the charisma or the gravitas or the prominence of someone that can convince Australians that she is someone that could be their prime minister, that their leader. I don't think she has that. Unfortunate for her, and I think it's we're seeing that play out in the public space when it comes to her own party, where she can't keep them together. Um, compare her to someone like well, in this image, Pauline Hanson, for instance. She'll never be prime minister, of course, in One Nation, but if you look at her as a leader, she has that leadership kind of quality that people see. Even if you don't like her, you can kind of admit she has particular qualities that you would attribute to a leader. Same thing with like a Jacinta Price from the Liberal Party. She has those fighting qualities that you see in leadership, where you feel like she can get the troops behind her, that she can contain order within her own party ranks, right? Susan Ley doesn't have that. And I think that's why she's really struggling. But let's read this article and then I'll give some of my thoughts. Support for Pauline Hanson's One Nation has surged to its highest level since 2017, um, as Susan Ley's approval rating plunges and Labour records its strongest primary vote in 28 months. And that is really concerning that Labour, is recording their strongest primary vote. Like they're going up. you know, this is insane if you look at the state of our nation. An exclusive news poll conducted by the Australian reveals core support for coalition remains at a near record low, while One Nation's primary vote rose to 11%, which is almost double the minor party's performance at the May 3rd election. The news poll, which was in the field Monday and Thursday last week before Andrew Hastie quit Miss Lay's shadow cabinet, shows the coalition's primary vote remains at a historically low 28%. The result is just 1% higher than the 27% in last month's poll, which was the lowest level of support for the Liberals and Nationals since Newspoll first counted primary votes in November 1985. So just think about that. Since the counting of these polls, and whatever you may have views on the polls, under Susan Ley, it is the lowest that it has been since 1985. Now, there must be many factors playing into that, but I believe personally that the qualities of the leadership that is lacking in the way that Susan Ley at least presents to the public has a major part to play in that. I just don't think, at least with what she's doing right now, that she is presenting herself as an alternative prime minister to Albanese. And just to reiterate, Albanese is bad, so it should be at least a viable task for almost anyone to do against Albanese, but she is struggling. As Miss Lace battles to keep the coalition united on key issues, including migration, net zero by 2050 emissions, and energy, the opposition leader's net approval rating slipped to minus 20, with 31% of voters satisfied with her performance and 51% dissatisfied. And those are the main issues, right? So net zero and migration, the energy issue, especially even migration when it comes to Andrew Hastie, they're the ones that the Liberal Party is really struggling on to have a concrete, unified vision as a team. Despite all of Labor's nonsense, right, they do present a unified front. They get behind their leader. Now, it's good to have a coalition or a conservative movement where you have different thoughts and different lines of view and different ideas, and people battle them out. Still have to, I believe, be able to present to the people of Australia a unified vision as a party, right? Because otherwise, it just reflects poorly on you as a leader. And I think that's what's happening with the Liberal Party. They're just not unable to do that because they're just so afraid. They are so afraid to be the conservative movement in this country that Australia needs, right? They're afraid to be the alternative political movement to what the left and what the Labor are doing in this country. In Victoria, we've seen that for decades, and it's just destroyed the Liberal Party here in Victoria, right? They try to kowtow to Labor policies in the sense of appeasing what maybe Labor voters might like, or what people in the middle, they don't want to push the envelope too far. They don't want to challenge things. They don't want to give people aspirational ideas about what it means to be an Australian, for instance, because it might offend the immigrants. All these kind of things, right? So they're not willing to put themselves out there anymore and present to people their vision for Australia and the ideals behind which their party was built, these conservative principles. They don't want to stand on those anymore. So naturally, people are rejecting them. And with that rejection, which the rest of the story is about the rise of One Nation. And it's possible by the time that next election comes around, One Nation might pick up a few more seats. And look, I don't mind the future where we have maybe a coalition between One Nation, the Liberals, and the National Party or something, if that's what it takes. That might be what it takes to take on the Labour Party. I don't know how viable any of these things are, but it's kind of what it's feeling like right now with the current crop of the Liberals. And I just think they're so disconnected. I think people would support them. I've traditionally before I really became engaged with politics, I would have just traditionally voted like liberal. I think the last time I voted liberal was around was it Tony Abbott, that era, and then when they backstabbed Tony Abbott with Scott ScoMo or whatever, I felt a bit offended as like just the way that they were carrying on, like just like the Labour Party before that. But yeah, I think they're just really struggling as a party. I don't know. It's just sad to see that, and obviously it benefits Labour to no end, and they're loving life. Labour is loving life. Uh, you know, like as whatever we say about Albanese, they're they're basically they're watching the Liberal Party self destruct during the tenure of Albanese. Like he can claim some credit for doing that to them. We got one from Dean Adams. Thanks for the super chat. Says Andrew Hastie is the future of the Liberal Party, and the globalist politicians are terrified of him. Shame on Dutton. Yes, I did see some. They were bringing up some dirt from around the election time. So look, there are people within these political parties who are so entrenched, and they just think about party politics and just petty things. I don't think they necessarily think far ahead into the future of the country and what might be good for the country or the party or the people. But yeah, look, Andrew Hastie, I don't know 100% a lot of things about him that well because he's a senator from, I believe, yeah, a lower house member from, where was he? Western Australia. But just the brief stuff that I've seen of him talking and articulating his vision, at least he is a person of conviction. And a lot of the times, that's all they want to see sometimes from their politicians. Just some belief in the things that they are saying, that they truly believe in the things that they're telling you, right? Not even if they don't deliver it. I mean, if they deliver it, it's a bonus. But if they actually, you look at them and you listen to them and you're like, they want to do that at least. They want to try to do that. They might not be successful, but they want to achieve that particular goal, that particular promise. Susan Ley, you don't know what you're going to get with her because you feel like she'll just bend to the wind of whatever popular opinion Albanese is pushing at that time, and she will be like, "Yes, we'll do that as well, but we'll do that like, two times better." Right? That's the kind of thing that I get the vibe from Susan Ley. But from Andrew Hastie or Jacinta Price, the vibe I get is like, these are the things that we see for the future of this country. This is the vision that we have for Australia. This is what we want to achieve. It's going to be hard, but this is what we need to do for the country. And a lot of people resonate with that, Even if Labor wins again next term, if we had a Liberal Party or a political movement that was saying that this is what we want, this is the vision we see for Australia, people would get behind that and support that. And you need to build that up. Trump has managed to do that with the Republican Party, very famously, and you're seeing now the fruits of that, which is more people in that country engaged in the political process, to the sense of seeing Republican policies, especially younger people, as a way for the future for America. And we also have the possibility now of having multiple Republican terms, like J.D. Vance, for instance, become the next president. These things all seem possible now under the leadership of Donald J. Trump. Let's have a look at your comments, guys. There's a lot of things I can't read here. You guys are funny. I'm sure people are reading in the comments as they go down. RVJ says Victoria is broken. Yeah, Victoria. I mean, I think we have our election next year, 2026, and I would say, as bad as everything is in Victoria right now, Jacinta Allen is still on track to win. Right? She's had a big victory today in Victoria with the announcement that the little underground stations have been opened. Those things will obviously play into propaganda. And look, overall, services wise for people in Victoria, yes, it's a good thing, but the costs are obviously exorbitant, over budget. I don't want to go into that now, but it looks like she will win the next election for sure. At the moment, hopefully something changes with Brad Batten. Liberty Prime says the Liberal Party is finished. It's One Nation now. Other smaller parties need to join One Nation. Yeah, I mean, I think personally, I would like to see what we're kind of seeing in the UK with reform, where you have this third alternative minor slash emerging major party possibly as the sentiment shift, and I think that gives maybe hope for what could happen possibly in Australia. But the problem with what the UK is going through is it's just gotten so bad in that country. It's just so bad for the people there, and yeah, like I was there during the big march that Tommy had, and let's forget about the figures. People saying between 500,000 to 3 million people. Doesn't matter. There was lots of people on the street, and I think people are really worried about where they are at in the UK. I was going to say where it's headed. I think just where they're at, because yeah, things aren't good, and sometimes like we discussed earlier in the show, it does take things to get really bad for massive changes to occur. Um, so yeah, like whether we have one nation as the alternative to the coalition in the future one day, I don't know. Right now, like my personal views, One Nation is very much tied to Senator Pauline Hanson. She is the face of One Nation, and it just depends on how that's carried out into the future. I think it's really important that transition um, in One Nation. I'll read this comment. Gearhead Boris says Shooters and Fishers Party is a Labour front. Drew B says Turnbull ruined it. That was the start. Yeah, Turnbull as a part of the Liberal just doesn't make sense, especially when you see him talking today. Like it just doesn't fit into the Liberal. Like maybe he does. I don't know. Just when you see him, he just seems like a left wing hack. He seems like literally like Kevin Rudd's brother. Dean Adams says, Pauline will never be prime minister, but One Nation can control the balance of power in the Senate if they do well next election. Yeah, and look, that's all you need. You can have these guys playing prime minister, the Labour and Liberals, but if you can control the balance of power in either of those houses as a smaller party, then you can still affect change in a positive way for the country. I think that's kind of the first goal that you need from these minor parties which are rising, like One Nation, for them to have the type of ability to, like what the Greens are doing, pretty much like the Greens are doing what us on the right conservatives would want to see in a minor party on that side of politics, right? They do sway Labour Party in certain directions when it comes to certain policies. And we would like to probably see that more on the other side as well. And that can change the outlook for a country for sure. I think the Greens have had really bad influences on the direction of Australia. So it's more than possible that a minor party can. Good point from DML. Australia is really struggling as a country because of compulsory voting mainly. I don't think the system is going to be changed anytime soon, unfortunately. So we got to valid discussions to have, but we got to kind of work within the system that we have as well. Maybe criminal. This is a criminal comment. Albo is a good leader. Look, I will say this about Anthony Albanese, and this is the same thing about a lot of these kind of left wing leaders. Uh, Policy wise, they're like bad policymakers. They have left wing, radical, deranged ideas that I don't agree with. I think they're destroying the country. But if you just look at them as a leader of their particular party, just in that aspect of it, they tend to do somewhat of a good job of, taking that helm as a leader. Um, I, there've probably been a few bad ones. Maybe Kevin Rudd was probably the worst that I can think of as a Labour leader. Um, but overall, most of them have been good within the actual party itself, uh, being able to show confidence as a leader. Um, so that's just it's true. But yeah, I don't agree with Albanese on his policies and the way that he's destroying the country. Kevin says engaged in politics equals become a good goy. I mean, not sure exactly the references like you're trying to make there, Kevin, but maybe you can expand on it. But what are you trying to say? That people that are engaged in engaged in caring about their country are somehow, Zionists. Or I don't know what exactly you're trying to say. Albo is a good leader if you need to be led into failure. Well, I think this is a joke, but communism just hasn't been done right yet. Yeah. How many times are you going to keep? How many times are we going to keep trying same failed thing? It's always presented as some type of utopia, and it always ends with like either hundreds of millions of people dying, or starvation, or some type of civil conflict. Alexander Romano says the Libs could easily reclaim their seats. So easy, are they not reading the room? I think they're struggling. Personally, I think they're struggling with the demographic changes in Australia. Obviously, the other changes in terms of social interactions between members of the public, and things like gender and sexuality and all those kind of things are kind of playing into it in different states, and they just not being upfront about what their views and vision and values are. And if they just kind of cemented that and just told people, hey, this is 100% who we are, all right? I think they have some sort of constitution or a statement, Liberal Party values statement that people always bring up and say, what happened to that Liberal Party? They're just afraid to like be who they are or just say what they want to do now. Because that would allow people, I believe, to make decisions about, okay, cool, this is what the Liberals are. They're stop pretending to be conservatives the same way that you used to be maybe 20, 30 years ago. That is one nation that I want to vote for now, or this other party that's more to my liking, and you kind of understand that better now if they're more clear about who they are. Nathan says that Hasty is an ex-Australian SAS. Definitely, I think he's obviously got a leadership background coming from the military. A lot of people who do active service or have served in some capacity learn leadership skills, or being under pressure. Those type of skills, experiences, definitely I think makes for good leadership material when it comes to politics as well. It's not always essential. Uh, it's not always essential. Like Donald Trump, for instance, I don't think he's seen an active theater of war. I think he did go to West Point or somewhere like this, but he hasn't been an active duty or anything like this. But he's still a good leader. But he comes from that business experience, that business background, and I would think that a lot of liberals would have that more than the Labour Party, because a lot of them come from like union backgrounds and activist backgrounds, and they haven't really run businesses. You can tell from their policies. Whereas the liberals more so come from that background, but these days they just like they just don't live up to it anymore. It's just weird how they've all changed. Someone wants to deport Thomas Sowell. I believe he's a foreigner from New Zealand. So there was a petition to deport Thomas as a foreigner from New Zealand. I don't know, but he's a citizen, so I guess we are still stuck with Thomas. Solomon says both two major parties are trying to get the immigrants' vote now. Cooked. Yeah, that's pretty much what's happening. They are trying to get the immigrant vote. I saw a great video. Let me just have a look at it. Well, it's not great. It's the foretelling of the future that we are going to face in this country with the way things are going. Let me just find it while I'm chatting with you guys here. It's really to show you what happens over time with demographic shift. Um, Let me just see if I can find that video, because definitely the immigrant vote has become a major topic of concern for these political parties, and they, whether it's just stuff like showing up at festivals, which they love to do. They love going to like cultural festivals. They like putting on the cultural gear of other nations, and showing that they respect those things. And look, there's different varying degrees of why that could be something that politicians could be engaged in as a part of community building. The problem with all of that is that a lot of them, especially in the Labor Party, will then turn around and be like, "Oh, we should abolish Australia Day, right? So it's one thing to go to some, Chinese New Year festival and, wear some Chinese attire and, talk about how great, Chinese New Year is and how great the Chinese Australians are. That's all good. That's all well and good. But then if you don't do that for your own country in Australia, and then your message is, hey, we need to abolish Australia or Australia Day, or Australians are racist, it's a bad country or an evil country, then it's problematic. And the problem with the West is that a lot of the leaders, right? A lot of the leaders are like this, in this vein, where they will do things for other demographics. They will do things to appease immigrant populations, and then they will then turn around and then bash their own country. And it's just disgusting to see. You don't see that outside of the West, really. It's this obsession within the West for people to self-hate, their history. It's kind of really weird, but it happens a lot, and it's unfortunate. But the consequences of that are far greater than just political parties having to search for votes in different demographics. I mean, that is one consequence of it for sure. But over time, the more and more you like kind of bash your own country, the more and more you hate on, Australia, the more and more you tell people, hey, this country's got a bad history. We need to recreate it. We don't have an identity. Let's get a new flag. The more you do that, the more you have more, these kind of more dominant eventually become more dominant. These kind of more dominant cultures that are more patriotic about their histories, about their countries, about their nations, about their religions, for instance, the more they start to dominate then within your uh, within your country, right? And that's what we're seeing in the UK, because they've given up on their identity, really, and they've tried to create some sort of utopian multicultural society where simulation is not really a thing whatsoever. Well, what happens when there's no kind of necessity to integrate into the nation as a whole? You start having these other cultures which are more dominant start to take precedence. And that's the video that I wanted to show you. So I'll try to find it now, because it just shows you from the UK, just how, from Scotland, the leader of one of the, in the Labour movement in Scotland, talking about, I guess, the importance. Here we go. I found the video. It took me a while. Just 50 seconds, all right? 50 seconds. Let's just look at the concerns of the future in Australia. I think this is where we're headed. This is an example. I don't think it's going to be Pakistan or India or anything like this. I'm just saying in general, this is what happens when we get down to it.
We will only truly get real power if we just have more Pakistanis sitting in council chambers and parliaments, but actually having more Pakistanis and South Asians sitting in the corridors of power making the decisions. And that's where I'll end tonight, is to say the change is coming. And the days where our South Asian community are viewed as a vote bank or a curry bank are well and truly gone. The days where South Asian communities get to lead political parties and get to lead countries is now upon us. The days when South Asian communities get to decide not just which school our children go to, but what they are taught in those schools is also coming. We will only truly get real.
DMAC, your comments are coming through fine. I don't know why it's not. I don't know why it's not showing up everything properly. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, the video is loud. Okay, sorry, the video is loud. But I think the point of the video was this: he is the Scottish Labour leader of the Scottish Labour, says Pakistanis have to take over schools and government in the UK. But the way that he's talking is, if you listen to it, he's not addressing the people there as British or as Scots or anything like this. These, like, the Pakistanis, the South Asians. Those days of us being not important in this sphere are gone. Now we can start setting the agenda. We're going to take leadership positions, and we're going to do this, this, and that, right? And I'm not, like, you might be saying, Rukshan, this is you're a South Asian heritage. Are you saying that you have intentions to take over Australia and all this kind of stuff? It's not about that, right? The distinction has to be that the people that are in your country, whether they're from immigrant backgrounds or not, are working in the best interests of the country itself. Now, I personally don't believe the best interests of the country have anything to do with something in Sri Lanka or South Asia. I think it has to be the opposite of those things, because if it was something to do with something in South Asia, or like this guy's talking about in Pakistan, go to Pakistan, right? If that's the best system, if that's the way that things are great, and this is all great, and we're gonna do it like the Pakistanis have the influence to do it, in the way that we see things. Go to Pakistan and do it, right? Go to Sri Lanka. It doesn't matter what country. I'm just using Asia as an example because of this guy. That's what I believe. So you have to work in the interest of your nation and the Australian nation, the Australian culture, the Australian identity, and then you have to understand the underlying foundations of that are it's built on its British history, of course, and also its Christian roots. And there's natural a progression from that to where we are today in this country. And if those things aren't a part of your value system, and your whole concept as a leader or someone that takes power is to infuse things from your, a foreign culture, and then create that because, somehow that's like what is good. No, it's not. Go back. Like that's what I believe personally. Like, go back. Go do it there. Like, if it was so much, but go somewhere else. Like, it's not racist. It's not none of these things to have those kind of views that I have. And I know white Australians get called racist when they have these views, but it's actually it's common sense to be opposed to foreign cultural elements changing a country in a way which is against the ethos or the prevailing value systems of that country itself. Sometimes it's compatible things that happen, right? People coming from foreign countries, they might have entrepreneurial skills, or they might have that kind of business mentality. They might be into capitalism. Those things naturally work with what we see in Australia. So those things match. But if you're coming in and you're like, oh, we want to have like Sharia law courts, or in Victoria they're talking about African courts because the little African kids are running around with machetes, cutting people up and robbing people. Well, no, we don't need African courts in Australia. What does it make? What do you mean you want African courts? Go back to Africa and have your African court there and live your African life there. Like, that's you have to be like that at a certain point. And for a long time, people have not been like that, and people are more vocal about that now for sure. But I think there's a way to approach this discussion and approach this argument, and to make that clear, because many of us who have migrant heritage backgrounds here in Australia do not want anything whatsoever to do with any type of foreign thing, which our families, which our parents have had to flee from in some instances. Not all of us, right? For whatever reason, different people, a lot of people have come to Australia and come to countries in the West because they've left behind those failed systems. No, there those ideas, those religious ideas, those things that have failed in those countries don't need to be here. Okay? That's my way of thinking about it. I don't know. Let's have a look at your comments. Yeah, I just don't care. Like, I just don't care for like what if this is your goal at this particular leader. I'm going on about it again. Is to have more Pakistanis in government and positions of power. Like, what are you talking about? Have more Scots. Have more people with your same ideological views. Nothing to do with your country or the land that people have left behind. People that have labor values, even if we don't agree with them, or that people that have conservative values, that ideology. That's what you should want, not people that look like you to push your particular worldview. Samuel, thanks for joining in from Perth, mate. Hello, hello, hello. Kevin says, no, no, no. You work in the interest of your values. Those values aren't always represented by our current government. Why would we change for the better using other countries as an example? Yeah, I think I agree with you, mate. I think so. Doug says one country, one law. Yeah, I agree, Doug. I think when it comes to the West, the Anglosphere, we have shared interesting history. Obviously, it's a shared history. Parts of it, whether we look at Australia, Canada, New Zealand, we have that kind of shared British heritage. Even the Americas, as much as America wants to be separated from that, and they did have their own little revolution slash civil war to define who they are. Part of the British and French colonies and so on. So it's this shared history of the West that we all kind of have different interpretations of. But it works. It works, and it is attractive people from all around the world to want to be a part of that. So why would these people then want to change it and alter it? And then why do we have these globalists and these other people that are trying to like make everyone into this one melting pot of everything? It just doesn't make sense, right? Liberty Prime says it's not possible for some cultures to integrate into the West, e.g., Islamists. Yeah, I definitely agree with the sentiments there. Like, not all cultures are equal. I've said this many times on my shows. Not all cultures are equal. Like, we have to, as a baseline, accept that. Like, not everything's equal, guys. Not all cultures are equal. There has to be for us in Australia, for instance, we have to be like, no, our culture is the dominant one. It is the best one. It is based on a kind of Christian values, Judeo-Christian. If we want to be really accurate, I know people get offended by that. Based on these kind of principles that we've had handed down to us through generations and generations that have built our moral and ethical codes that we live by. Yes, it's been shaped by wars. It's been had disagreements. There've been legal battles over definition. Yes, we've abolished slavery. We've abolished. There's been civil rights movements. All of those things combined around the world in the West has created the type of societies that we live in today, and those things matter. Other cultures sometimes they, although they have good attributes themselves that might work within their frameworks, it is not compatible sometimes with the West, and we have to accept that reality. And for too long, it's been this: hey, we're all kind of the same. This kind of this mentality, everything's the same. But no, if you talk to an actual, Islamist, for instance, they will tell you if you want to be completely honest, if you talk to an Islamist, they will tell you, no, our culture is the best. We are dominant. It is about everyone will accept this one day. You just don't see it yet, right? So they're realists, and they'll tell you exactly to your face. Like they will not lie to you. In that manner, if you ask them honestly, they will tell you, no, we truly believe that our culture is the best. Hilton says, Rukshan, thank you for your well measured opinions. It scares me. The future is becoming so distant from the culture and Christian beliefs. I wouldn't go myself to another country and try to change it. Yeah. The natural argument to that is, and I've seen this made by a lot of South Asians, particularly, or people that were part of the British Commonwealth or are former colonies, that, the British, for instance, came in, uh, and that's just one example. We had the Spanish, we had the Portuguese, came in and introduced and forced upon the people in those places their values and their cultures and all these kind of things. And to some extent, there is validity to that. But if your argument is that you were opposed to that and that wasn't a good thing, why would you, as revenge, then want to inflict that on another place? Especially when the equation is different, right? A lot of these places, they have the autonomy. They're not under colonial rule. They've had a long time to establish their own countries, and they've had their own little problems, but they have their own autonomy. It's not linked to the British anymore. So I don't think those arguments really carry weight to the extent that people think that they do. History is complicated, but we don't need to, you know, there's no need for a tit for tat. If you're literally leaving behind your war torn third world country, for instance, and coming to a Western nation where it's first world and people, accepting of different, it's secular, you accept different faiths and different cultures, and people are living in peace, right? And then you come there and you're like, oh, hey, you know what? because the British came like back a couple of hundred years ago and messed with us. You know what? We're going to introduce, we're going to push our religion here now, and we're going to make everyone that's Christian into a Muslim or a Hindu or whatever, and that is the revenge that we're taking, and it's just how it is, and so on, right? I probably maybe I'm not making sense to some of you guys, but this is kind of the way that people look at this issue. Some people, not everyone. Someone said my mic's off, but I don't know. I think it's working. Is it because women can't be in government in Pakistan? I think women are in government in Pakistan. They actually had, I think, long before Australia, one of their leaders was one of their prime ministers was a woman. So I don't think it's necessarily that. Samuel says, Jesus is my Lord. Thanks for the comment, mate. Andrea says, Australia is grounded in Judeo Christian values and it is interpreted in a different way within that framework. Doug says, Islam does not tolerate other faiths. Yeah, look, and I don't think that's how do you explain this? It is their belief in that all like everyone should be of that faith. It's not. I don't think it's about tolerance. As such, it's just like that one mindset, one view, and that dominant belief. But maybe yeah, maybe the way you put it is right. I'm just trying to say it's just like it's just a natural state of Islam to be that way. Dean says the British colonies are the most successful in the world. Yeah, I mean there is truth to that definitely. I mean there has been benefits of colonization or colonialism. I would agree that there's been some really good examples of that being uh, carried on after the colonial powers left. But then there's been worse examples where some places have disintegrated. But if you look at all the former colonialists, whether it's the British, the Spanish, the Portuguese, the Dutch, I think by far the British were the better colonizers during that period of time. Like if you were colonized by the British, you had it much better than if you colonized by the Spanish. Or I think the French were amongst the worst as well, and maybe the Italians. Where what they were doing in Africa was pretty bad. But overall, I think the British were the better colonizers, for sure, historically. And Narelle says, talking about coming here for a better life and adopting our values, why is there a need for Indian community leaders, etc.? Trying to understand if they are doing it en masse and not just the Indian community. So, talking about coming here for a better life and adopting our values, why is there a need for e.g. Indian community leaders? Trying to understand if they are doing it en masse and not just the Indian community. I mean, it depends, right? So, what happens is generally when communities come to a country, right? When you have different people of different backgrounds, they usually move to a certain area. I'll pull up this comment again. They usually move to a certain area, and naturally, there's organizations that form, just like any kind of group, based around their identity, right? And then they'll have community centers, and usually because of religious centers, you'll have community leaders come up, and just kind of it just naturally happens, right? Especially within free societies, it happens more often than not. But even in repressed societies, you can look at it in the Middle East, for instance, under the Ottoman Empire, you still had lots of different communities living with different religious faiths and different backgrounds in those. with their different quarters, right? The Jewish quarter, the Muslim quarter, the Armenian quarter, for instance, in Jerusalem. Like those things happen over a long period of time. So the same thing happens in Australia when you have different communities. You have Chinatowns and all this kind of stuff. And aspects of that I think are fine. It's completely fine. But then what happens is when the demographics shift, and I see this a lot in Victoria, especially within the religious institutions, governments get involved, right? And they figure out, hey, you know what we can do? We can appeal to this particular demographic. And if we can get them to vote for us, that means that, we'll have this new voting block for us. But see, if you have already community leaders established within a particular community, whether it's Chinese or Indian, and usually they end up being religious leaders most of the time when it comes to ethnic communities or religious groups. If we can get those groups on side, that cuts out all the work that we have to do to reach everyone else. So really, you just need to get the temples and stuff. I'm just talking about the Indian communities, for instance. We just need to get the temples. We need to get those religious leaders on our side. We need to wine and dine them, as an example, and give them grants for their projects, and really just go there. And that's why you have images of Albanese in like turbans and Daniel Andrews in turbans and things like this, because you only need to appeal to those particular leaders in those groups. And then those leaders in turn, because they have the clout and the legitimacy within their own community groups, will be able to say, hey, you know what? Labour Party is not so bad, right? Hey, you know what? This liberal guy that's come out here and he's he's a good guy. Labour's looking out for us, right? And they might even say it during a community meeting at one of their religious halls, right? This is kind of the thing that happens. And then everyone's like, "Oh yeah," and they're not really following politics because they're kind of starting to build their lives in Australia, and they're doing other things. They're like, "Oh yeah, the guy that we trust and go to at the temple that we pray at, he said, Labor's not so bad," and then you vote Labor. Like literally, that is what's happening. That's kind of the funnel of votes. So that's why you end up having community leaders within these groups, right? So that's why they appeal to those community leaders. But because I don't want to offend people, but because Westerners, right, um, have this sense of, oh, these downtrodden immigrants, what can they possibly do? We will have them in our pocket. We'll control them, and we just feel so sorry for them. And we're going to do all these things, and we're just so much better than them. Like there are people that think like this, right? Because they have this mind frame and they don't understand that at the same time while that's happening, there are groups within those organizations which are going, hey, you know what? We don't need to go to the Labour Party you know, we don't need to bend our knee to them. Why don't we just run our own candidates, right? Actually, we have a lot of people in our community right now. Why don't we just run people that just represent our interest? Actually, why don't we join these political movements? Why don't we join the councils? Why don't we join the Labour Party? Stack it, really. And look, none of this might actually be badly, bad intentions of these groups. But why don't we just do this? And we just do it ourselves now. And there is a breakdown that happens in that space where you do have people that come up and they're like, yes, let's do this. Actually, let's push our own interests. Let's push our religious interests. Let's push our community interests. And that's really what's happening. And then at the same time, because you have religious groups, for instance, in Australia that are opposed to each other, whether it's not said in public or not, I don't know. But for instance, historically, Hindus and Muslims in different parts of the world have not got along, so they're against each other in some aspects. Same thing with certain within India itself, you have people who are Sikh and sometimes Hindus, and they have this Khalistan thing. These groups don't get along. But then you have even more internalized separation within these communities, and they're almost like against each other. So while all these groups are fighting against each other, none of them are thinking about Australia and the Australian identity. They've all of a sudden figured out that they can actually take power in these countries the way it's set up. Now, it sounds all nefarious what I'm saying when I say take power, but I'm saying at a real level, at a local level, or at a state level, or a federal level, and they can have a presence. And Australia is not really there yet. It's just becoming a thing here where we're talking about the Muslim vote, the Indian vote, and the Chinese vote, for instance. But in the UK, you're seeing this power that has been amassed. And these Pakistani guys that I showed you in Scotland are openly now talking about how they can influence the culture, they can influence the schooling because they've managed to amass that power. So it's hard to reverse it. And that is the problem. And there's very few people because a lot of this is intertwined with religion. A lot of it's intertwined with like fundamental religious views as well. And like I said, historical hatred of certain groups. Right, we're seeing that in Australia play out. Very hard to unravel it, undo it. And the more people that you have being born into this country now, that are being shipped in by the hundreds of thousands every year, with no attempts at assimilation, the worse that this problem becomes. And then it's too late. And from that, yes, there will be exceptions. Maybe I'm an exception. Maybe you guys think I'm an exception. There are people. There are a lot of people like us that see these problems, in these communities that our heritage hails from, and we're not a part of that. Like I am excluded from, Sri Lankan communities. Like they would not look at me as a good member of the Sri Lankan community. Like I'm excluded. I think I've heard them talk about me on some other podcasts and saying that we don't really know him in the Sri Lankan community, but those white people know him, and there's white people that like him, right? So that's how people like look at us, people like us. But there's a lot of people like us, immigrants, that love this country and understand the problems of those particular groups, and a lot of it I think is actually pushed by religious fundamentalism in certain ethnic groups, and group interests. And it's true. All of this is happening, guys. Like, I'm just trying to be honest here and saying that these things are happening. And that's why you see Albanese, that's why you see Dutton or Daniel Andrews or Susan Lay at Diwali festivals or at Eid and Ramadan and all these things. And they're putting all the religious stuff on and doing that show. It's all a part of that. And they know that this is kind of where it's going. And then these groups will obviously see the weaknesses that are there. And there'll be some figures that will try to take benefit of it for themselves. And sadly, the country suffers as a whole. Like Australia suffers, our identity suffers. And yeah, I don't know the complete way to push back against that. I personally believe that we have to start getting more people who are immigrant background, who have the immigrant heritage, to see Australia more than just an economic zone, or it being a something that they can exploit for their benefit and send back money overseas and things like this. Like that, you have to get people out of that mind frame. And I think it's possible because we've seen Donald Trump do it. With certain demographics in the United States of America, where they've had that problem. It's taken a lot of time to do that, but you can get people to love a country and work for that country. And I know that there'll be people that will say, "Oh, we just mass deport everyone, all these things." Guys, that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen the way that people are fantasizing about. What's actually happening is we're going to end up with these kind of guys, what they have in Scotland and England, where they've managed, while people are distracted with things like deportations and these kind of racial attacks and crazy things, in the background, these communities are working and actually getting themselves into positions of power and continuing to grow their base. And the next thing you know, like they are in complete control. And that is like what I fight against, is kind of trying to raise awareness of these things actually happening, and this is a real thing. Um, but yeah, let's have a look at some of your comments, guys. I've been just yapping on there. I got focused on that. I'll probably end the show after these comments as well. It's been going on for till 11, so a few hours. See what you guys are talking about. Amda says this is all being done on purpose by current governments who are following the agenda for the 21st century. The 2030 goals are fast approaching. Yeah, 5 more years to Agenda 2030. And there are elements of this, of course, that we see in whether it's in the UN policies or in the World Economic Forum, for instance, when the discussions that they have, the language that they use, obviously, like about replacement theories, replacement migration, and things like this. Obviously, very. If you just read the words themselves, it sounds very dystopian. But parts of that do play out. Not maybe so nefariously, but like it's kind of like the boiling frog mentality. And there is a replacement of not just about ethnicities, but just about worldview and ideology that's happening. So there's a lot of things at play. Hilton says, I believe a major issue is migrants being able to get any government handouts until they've worked to pay taxes for at least 10 years. It makes Australia want a country to come to. Yeah, look, I think that's a part of it. Definitely. I don't know if it's true to say 100% that migrants just always come for handouts. Like a lot of people, a lot of these kind of migrants, especially, are used to living in very hard conditions with very little. They're happy to go through a lot of suffering. They can achieve the ends of having a better life. So there is a lot of that kind of motivation happening as well. So I don't know that this not having government benefits will be a disincentive, but definitely would have an impact on the system being abused. That's for sure. And you do want higher quality migration. That's the thing, right? Skilled migration. You want to have empathetic migration, perhaps for like legitimate refugees and asylum seekers, if they are 100% legitimate. That's not happening at the moment. I don't believe so. But definitely, you want to attract. If you want to have any type of migration, you want to attract the type of migration that benefits the country, and that's usually skilled migration or targeted migration to help with fulfill certain inadequacies we may have in a certain service industry, whether it be medical to mechanics, whatever it is. Like there's ways that you can build up a country with migration in a smart way, but flooding it with just hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people when we can't even define what Australia is today is problematic for the future, I think. Ryan says Britain were evil. I think you're talking about colonialism. Look, it's all subjective. It depends. Obviously, uh, yeah, like the act of colonizing a place you could determine as evil for sure. But whether it was going to happen with the British, the Chinese, like someone was going to do it, right? And it's not like these countries, like people talk like India, for instance, colonized parts of the world, right? Back in the day. That's why Hinduism spread so far. Like that's why you have Hinduism in parts of Bali, for instance. Like these parts of their empires spread throughout different parts of the world. Like it is not just purely a white thing. We discuss it in in that way because it's the West that we talk about this. But look at Genghis Khan, for instance. I mean, he may have colonized in a different way, but he rampaged through parts of Europe even. So it is not just about it's conquest and colonizing and war is a normal state for humans, and it's kind of how we've spread throughout the world. Cruel Intention says a cohesive society has no need for enclaves. I definitely agree with you. Like ideally, you don't want to have enclaves. I do understand kind of why people moved. That's human nature. We go where things are familiar, and historically, I think when we first started having immigration, people would often, you know, put people in certain areas and keep other people apart. For instance, whether it was on purpose or not, I don't know. But those kind of things were done, and it just naturally progressed. I think. I'm here, guys. I'm just reading the comments. See people having a conversation with Ryan. I love when Rook goes into search comments mode. You can tell he's live when he blinks. Yeah. I don't know. Is there a better way to flag comments? Because as I'm talking and I'm looking at these news stories, because I'm doing this all by myself, it's hard for me to see like what people are saying. I'm not focusing on the comments per se when I'm talking, and I try to catch up with it after. But yeah, I want the Indian man to watch us. All right. I don't know if that's in reference to me, but Rook, read in the comments like, what the F are these retards talking about? Pretty much. I was trying to figure out what was going on, but then I realized that there's Zach and Orion, and there's a few people having conversations with them. So, guys, look, thanks for joining me for today. My first episode back on Rukshan on X since coming back from London and Israel, and slowly catching up with the nuances of things that are happening in our world, and especially here in Australia, which is takes a bit of time to do when you've been away for so long. Let me know. I'll be next 5 minutes. If you guys have any questions directly, any questions about anything, uh, chuck it in the comments, and I'll try to answer those questions for the next 5-10 minutes, and then we'll finish up the show. If you've joined recently, guys, Rukshan on X, you can find me on Facebook, YouTube, X at the real Rukshan. So like, subscribe, follow, do all those things. Zach says, yes, it is you, Rook. Yes, thank you for watching, mate. I am Sri Lankan heritage, but yeah, look, if you want to just have me there on your TV screen looking at you at home, sure, by all means. Yeah, don't forget to like the post. Yeah, definitely help the algorithm, guys. Like, like the post, share, do all that stuff if you want to. Do those things. We're gonna build this up over time, right? We're gonna start from the bottom. I'm gonna keep building this up. Continue to do this because I think we need to have people in Australia really engaged in this space. And I know, look, there's a lot of people doing this as well, which is fantastic to see. It's great. I just love the fact that we're engaged like this and using these platforms. So yeah, definitely let's keep building this up, guys. This is a suggestion here from Mozzie's algorithm. Do a retrospective live where you comment on the comments after you have a chance to read them, I reckon. Look, that's not a bad idea. The reason I like to comment on the comments as it's going is because I've just found in the past it's taken me on interesting tangents, and then sometimes for the viewers as well, it's been interesting to discuss a point that someone else has made. Um, the other option is I can have someone monitoring the comments and like starring the ones that may be of interest that I can refer to later. DMAX says, Rukshan Fernando, do you prefer Rook or Shan as a nickname? My nickname has been Rook. I remember during like primary school and high school, it was like Rookie. A lot of people just say Rookie, so that's like ROOKIE or RUKI. But Rook is usually the shortened version of my name, Rook. John Brown says, hit the like button, Rookwitz. 100% mate. Thank you. Thanks for joining in again. Andre says, Shalom, Rukshan, you are the bomb. A lot of different references in there, Andre. So shalom, shalom. Thank you for watching. Zach says, I love Sri Lankans. That's so hot. The food can be spicy, mate. The food can be spicy. Thank you, Gearhead Boris. Yeah, hit the like for all, mate. Rukshan. Rukshan, Nando. Yes, my favorite food in the world is Nando's, which is actually Fernando's. So Nando's is short for Fernando's. But I would love to. I love having Nando's. Um, it's just I just the paella. I have the paella grande. It's massive. It's pretty expensive as well. Now I know there's people here who will tell me that Nando's it doesn't accept cash, but guys, I cannot help it. I gotta eat at Fernando's. Hilton, mate, thank you for your comments today. I appreciate you watching and joining in. Um, Great work, mate. Love your chat. Love your cast. Thank you. Thank you for being a part of it. Odon Bali says a lot of different views shared and trolling in chat without people losing their minds. It's a good thing. Yeah, look, I think it's good. Like I like the vigorous or spirited, little battles. I'm a bit of a troll myself in the sense of I enjoy the memes. I enjoy having a laugh and having a go. Like we got to be able to laugh at ourselves and not take everything so seriously. Politics can kind of be very divisive, but you can be light about things as well. Like I think Donald Trump has a lot of fun when he talks about world leaders, for instance. We can take a few things away from on how he carries himself. I think it's entertaining as much as the media and other politicians have a go at him for being sharing memes and doing things like this. If you look at the White House X, for example, they're always sharing memes and stuff. It's like I don't mind that. I think politics should be a little bit of fun as well. Why make it so serious? Dean, mate, I appreciate the super chat. Thank you so much. That's on YouTube, guys. So if you do want to support my work, not this show, but any other shows, guys, coming up in the future, you can join up on YouTube there and do super chats as well. That's great. Thank you, Dean. Thank you for your comments throughout the show. Madeline, hope you're doing well. If he wants to be Australian, he needs to join the push for a halt to mass immigration because that's where we are right now. Don't know exactly who you're referring to, but yeah, if it's me, yeah, I want to halt mass immigration for sure. Not just now. I've been against mass immigration for a long time. Recently, someone brought up comments that I made in 2019 about the issues in America on the border, trying to have a go at me. But I've been against mass immigration, especially illegal immigration, and the whole fake university system, as well as the fake asylum seeker claims that we have in this country. I think it's horrendous that people exploit the system like this because it not only the thing that most immigrants don't understand is that all these things, like, they are affected by it as well. Like, if immigrants knew the impacts of all of this, I'm saying new immigrants, they would also vote against these kind of policies because you cannot just have controlled mass immigration without impacting every aspect of your life. Doesn't matter where you're from. Mosi says, thanks for reading my comment, Rookie. It takes me back to Romper Room where she looked in the mirror and said your name as a kid. We know each other. His algorithm. Interesting. Yes, Nando's. I don't think Nando's is a fast food. It's good. I think it's good food. I have thought about John incorporating this into some type of maybe my show, calling it Fernando, and just talking here and there, saying, "Can you hear the drums, Fernando?" Jules, thanks for joining in. You were a saver for many of us Australians during COVID. Yes, a very trying time for many of us in Australia. I know people today. I get a lot of comments saying, "Oh, Rukshan, I'm disappointed in your views that you have today." And look, guys, this is the reality of the world. Is COVID was a very unique time. A lot of people that had a lot of different views on many things came together during that time. And even for me, like when I started doing that work during COVID, it's not really an opportunity during that time to discuss my other views on the world. And people are learning about me only last couple of years in terms of my own personal views, because a lot of that time during COVID, what was I doing? I was live streaming. I was talking on one singular issue, really, which was the COVID issue. So there's not much room to understand different dynamics and the views of an individual. Whereas today, when we're discussing different political topics, of course you're not going to agree with everyone. Like, I lose thousands and thousands of followers all the time based on different things that I say. But then I also gain thousands and thousands based on different things I say. So there's always this kind of back and forth that's happening. Obviously, people get offended right now when anything to do with Israel, Palestine. A lot of people, unfollowed me when I went to the Western Wall as a Christian and uh, partook in a show of respect while I was there. Like that kind of threw people over the edge. But I accept that. Like that's just how it is. This is how it is. I'm a bit more. I follow. I continue to follow people that I disagree with because I don't believe that I agree with them on everything, and I don't disagree with them on everything either. So it just depends, right? Like depends how you want your algorithm and how you want your feed to look. You are just following people that you just agree with, and that's kind of all you see. Well, yeah, like it must feel pretty good because everyone agrees with you. But in the real world, not everyone agrees, you know. And during COVID, it was like that. Not everyone agreed. A lot of people disagreed, but for some reason, a lot of people with different political views were on the same spectrum in terms of their opposition to what was happening during that time. But yeah, when it comes to other issues, yeah, for sure, people have different views. Ness, thanks for joining in. Great to see you back on here again, champ. Yeah, great to be back here. Solomon says Rook's cool. Thanks, mate. Rook is a G. That's exactly right. Yeah. Imagine if we could post memes in the chat. I think it would probably get out of control. But possibly, maybe I can build in some feature where I can bring up some memes or so and so. Amanda says, fun fact: Nando's first was opened in Rosetteville, Johannesburg, South Africa. Well, man, I want to. Is it still there? Because I would visit South Africa just to go to the first Nando's. That's how much I love Nando's. It's just like it just always hits the spot. Martina says full moon tonight. Talking about memes, Trump is the best. I'm wearing my sombrero right now. And then Ross here, who says, wasn't here to start shit with anybody, just saying you're not going to get a warm welcome from the crowds because of your alliance with Mossad Avi. And again, like I accept my relationship with Avi is going to rub certain people the wrong way. Like that's just, I accept that. I accept that in Australia, with the diversity that we have, apparently, which is a strength, the types of people that I know from different backgrounds, not everyone's going to get along. That like that is sometimes friendship. Like you have friends that other people might not like, but friendship is beyond how you treat someone based on what other people think. Like so, there is those aspects to it as well. And I'm fully aware of the views that people have around this particular topic. I don't agree with all the things that, for instance, all of Avi's views and things like that people might think. I disagree with them a lot, and we have our discussions. But there are many aspects where we get along, and we're really good friends, and we obviously do collaborative work together as well. And even the controversy, I don't mind. I don't mind people getting a bit worked up. It's all a part of kind of doing this type of work. It is what it is. Madeline clarified. I was replying to an ex poster with an Indian origin friend who wants to be seen as Australian. 99.5% of people at the march love Rukshan and welcome him. The March for Australia. Oh, okay. Yep, yep. Hilton says, I'll be doing super chats as soon as I get paid, my mate. Thanks, mate. I mean, you don't have to. Uh, that's not what I meant whatsoever when I was talking about super chats. But yeah, look, I appreciate all the support that I get. It truly does help, definitely. And I do this obviously as a passion. I love doing this, and something that I wanted to do for a long time was actually build up the confidence to do live streams like this, because you're putting on the camera, you're talking to people, you're reading news, and you're always worried about what people are going to think. But I've learned over all these years that you just got to do it, continue to do it, and it's just amazing to just talk with you guys and build up this audience. And this is the first show back after Israel and London, so I'm a bit rusty, but I will progressively get better. I think I was doing pretty good last couple of weeks before I went to Israel. We had something really solid built up here, and things are going really well. Who says, "Do you hear the guns, Fernando?" I don't know if I should be careful. George says, "I believe your best work is yet to come. Keep it up." Look, I mean, yeah, definitely. I look. I definitely enjoy doing this, and I want to continue to do this. I was thrust into this during COVID, and there's no control I had about any aspect of how things happened during that time in terms of what I wanted to do work wise. So I've had to figure myself out over the last couple of years to get to this stage, and then go forward from here. So definitely, it's something that I want to continue to pursue. And it's really about different ways of presenting news as well. Like I like doing the live streams. I like you know I don't necessarily when I do live streams, it's not so people agree with me or people like me when I post things. It's not so people like me or things like that. I just post things that I think I my opinion on it that other people might agree. Other people might find interesting or make it a point of discussion. Because what I've noticed is I don't know if you've seen this on especially on like Facebook, for instance. A lot of the news sites now, when they put up a particular news story, they'll disable comments. They don't like people having discussions. They don't like people having little fights in the comments or anything like that. They just turn it off. And I think that sucks. Zach says Rook is legit. I actually like you more than Avi now, even though you're not a Jew. I will take that, mate. Exactly what you mean. I'm not 100% sure, but I'll take that because you like me more than Avi. Got another super chat, guys, from Andy. Thanks, mate. See you on October 19th in Melbourne March for Australia. Yes, I do plan to cover the march for Australia. I haven't spent too much time talking about it. I think a lot of the discussions around it has got very polarizing and nasty and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, probably the week of or during that, if there's a build up to it, I'll talk about it a little bit more. John says, I lost my brothers and sisters because I don't comply. Yeah, COVID was a time that kind of tore a lot of families apart based on opinions. Mally MJ says, stay true, rookie. I'm a Christian and I went to the Big Buddha and got blessed by a monk. Yeah, look, I've partaken in all types of religious ceremonies for religions I've not, necessarily. I'm as a Christian. I'm a Christian, but especially as a wedding photographer, I'm involved in lots of different religious places, not just in Australia but around the world. And you are sometimes entering very sacred areas. There's respectful ways of dressing in certain areas, and you observe all of those things. And I'm very much used to that. And I've had people from lots of different faiths pray over me or been a part of those wedding ceremonies or partaken in sometimes, interestingly, assisting couples with certain religious elements when there's certain things that happen, right? So you do that, you understand that people have different faiths and different things, and you respect that. And I've always been one to respect that. When it comes to the wall specifically, as much as it's the Western Wall, it's a significant site for the Jewish community in Israel. The whole Old Testament, the biblical, the Old Testament has a lot of resonance within the old city of Jerusalem, Jerusalem itself, and a lot of the connections that we have as Christians come from the Old Testament as well. Like that is a part of the Christian story. If you believe it in the lineage of Jesus Christ, he comes from the lineage of David. So those things uh, are a part of the Christian tradition as well. And for me to be able to go to the Western Wall, recite Psalm 23, written by or attributed to King David, at that place. And have that connection to that history. For me personally, as a individual, like that was a moment that I cherish, and I really, privileged to be able to do that. And there is a connection to thousands and thousands of years of biblical history for people that believe that, like for people of faith in that part. And it's not about the current discussion right now about Israel and Gaza. It's not about any of that. It goes back much longer than that. So there are those things that for me at least, it's important. A lot of comments coming in, guys. I'll keep reading, guys. So the main part of the show is finished. I'm just reading your comments. Keep safe, Rukshan. Avoid see some people are out for trouble. Yeah, look, I'm not particularly worried. Like when I go to places, um, I just don't see the value of people at a March for Australia engaging in political violence. It just doesn't suit, especially for conservatives. It's just not a good look. So, the left has always been a bit rapid and they're always threatening. But usually within the right, people are a bit more sensible. So I don't feel as threatened or in danger, even though people have certain views because of their obsessions about certain religious things and like stuff like this. But I don't know. I'm not too stressed about that. Dean says you don't look so tired tonight. Oh yeah, I'm not. I'm not. I'm much better now. I feel like much better. I feel like more reinvigorated. After I got back, I was just like wrecked. Confirmation that the original Nando store is still operating. That's great. I definitely should head back. Oh yeah, you're saying don't go there back because of the crime aspect. Look, I don't know if where you're from, Amda, but I'm here living in Victoria, so dealing with machete crime and all sorts of crime here in Victoria. I don't know if it'll be much worse in South Africa, in Johannesburg. uh, and he says, Rook, there is so much input comedy on the side and one, and you are answering in real time. 100% love your work. Yeah, look, guys, I want to answer you guys in real time. There's actually a lot of comments I want to talk about, but I just find like aspects of it, people will get offended. I'm actually someone that's very unlikely to be offended by anything. So I'm happy to engage with some of this stuff, but I don't want to offend others on some of these topics. So that's why I just pick some, not all the comments. This is possibly true. What if Rukshat is dreaming about streaming and we are just in his imagination? I mean, I could probably be here for another hour or so going on like this. All right, we're at the end of the comments, guys. I think I'm getting right to the end. Martina says, Rookie is curious fly wanting knowledge about other religions and has been caught up in spider's webs, RV spun in deceit. I like how it's all described in this manner, Martina. The truth is, I'm very um, proud Christian with a lot of faith, and I have a lot of strong views, and I don't really discuss it too much. I've never really discussed these things too much. And obviously, people like they interpret things in different ways. But yeah, I I respect other people's beliefs, whether they're Jewish or Muslim, whatever it is, they can do their own thing. But definitely, I think Jesus is the way, and I'm doing my best to convert Avi over. So whatever you guys might be thinking is happening, I'm actually the one that's working on Avi Yemeni. So I'll probably end up taking him to a church soon and starting that conversion process. And I've already got him through the worship music. We'll get him baptized at some point as well. Mark my words. All right, guys. Thanks for joining in tonight. I hope you had a great show with me. I really enjoyed your presence. I really just loved the end here talking with you guys. Maybe we'll do that at the end. Just put 20 minutes of just questions and answers and discussions. That was a lot of fun. But I'll be back tomorrow night, I believe. Oh, actually, tomorrow, opposition podcast. We're going to see what Arvi's up to because I believe there is a rally or a protest that Arvi might be live streaming tomorrow. I won't be there. I think that's happening elsewhere. For October 7th, there's some activities going on. So there might be a live streaming on RV Yemeni tomorrow night if you guys want to catch that. So we might not have the opposition podcast tomorrow night, but I'll be back definitely on Wednesday for Rukshan on X. And then Thursday, we have the opposition podcast as well. But yeah, good night, guys. Thanks for joining in the conversations. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks for all the lively trolling. Uh, Still seeing stuff coming in. Starting on the Psalms, yeah. I mean, I love the Psalms. Um, yeah, that's just great. I think I might start him on the Psalms because there is a crossover, right? There is that crossover with the Old Testament, and a lot of that obviously being a part of Jewish faith as well. So there is that easy kind of conversation you can have, I believe. Anyway, I'm gonna go, guys. Have a good night.